action. And good afternoon everyone, and welcome to another edition of Care to Watch, Care to Cook. And today we're going to be cooking scones, or some people call them scones. Now, originally people think they're actually from Cornwall or Devon, but actually they come from Scotland. They're a derivative of a cake that was brought all the way down south, and we turned them into scones or scone. Now, I've made my own jam. I call it Man's Jam. It's Mark Anthony Nottingham strawberry jam. It's from my own strawberries in the bowls. You can buy this if you wish, £5 a jar, I'm really kidding. And what I'm going to show next is the ingredients, and hopefully by the end of this session, we'll be able to show you how to turn this scone into a cream tea. But before we do anything, I'm going to go away and wash my hands and get all that nasty bacteria off. Okay, so for the ingredients of this, you can get them anywhere. It's really quite simple. So in my bowl already, I have 400 grams of self-raising flour. I have 2 level teaspoons of baking powder, 50 grams of caster sugar. It's okay to use granulated if you've only got granulated in the cupboard. I've got 300 millilitres of skimmed milk, and I have 100 grams of softened butter. And whilst I've got 6 eggs on the table, I'm only going to use 2. Okay, step 1, really easy. I'm going to put a sieve over my mixing bowl. The flour that I've weighed out, which is my self-raising flour, I'm just going to pour into this sieve. And then the baking powder, the 2 level teaspoons, I'm going to put into that sieve as well, and just lightly sieve it in there. And the reason I'm doing that is just to make sure that the baking powder is mixed appropriately with the flour, so I get a nice even rise when it's in there. So I can put that away. I add my 50 grams of sugar into the mix, and with the butter we just add that into the bowl. It's nice and soft, so it's easy to mix. And all I'm going to do is lift up the flour and the butter, so I rub it in, and to make a consistency like breadcrumbs. So I'm just mixing it all in. It will get a bit tacky, but as you mix it in with the flour, you'll see it turning from a really floury substance into some nice rounded breadcrumb mixture. Just roll it between your thumb and your fingertips. Now, if you was making short pastry, you use cold batter, but in this instance we don't need to. We're not worried about the pastry being cold as it goes as we make it, or relaxing it. And as you can see, it's starting to turn a nice pale, creamy, buttery colour. Okay, and it's falling quite easily off my hands. Make sure that's all mixed in. So my hands, got some butter on there, and all I'm going to do before the next stage is I'm going to go back to the sink and I'm going to wash my hands before I do the next thing. Okay, so the next stage on this journey is adding my milk to my mixture. What I'd like to do is I like to add eggs into my milk to give it that nice creamy yellow texture. So I've got 2 eggs. I'm going to crack them into a bowl first, just to make sure I don't get any eggshell in there. 1, 2, and then I have my 2 eggs. I just add it to that milk mixture, my little whisk. And then you can see I've got a nice yellow mixture. Now all we simply do is we make a well in the mixing bowl with the flour. We're not going to add all this milk because we need some of the milk to glaze, but also it may be too much. If you have too much, it becomes too wet. Now typically with a scone we need a nice wet mixture anyway. If we make it too dry, we won't get that rise in the oven. So I had quite a lot of this milk in here. And if I feel I need to adjust it, I can add a little bit more flour. So you see I've left some milk and egg mixture in the mixing bowl. I'm just going to mix this in, see it's going to be light and a bit fluffy, and the hands all dirty and gooey, which is really nice. And you can see it's coming together, but it's quite moist, which is really good. I know I've got a good mixture here, and I don't want to overwork it. Okay, so there we go, that's our mixture. You can see it's quite wet. And guess what you need to do next? You just need to peel the mixture off your fingers and then wash your hands again. Okay, so we've got our mixture, and the next thing we're going to do is actually roll this, the mixture out, and then we're going to cut our scones. Now there's two ways you can do this. If you buy a cutter, you can have a fluted edge, which is like this, gives it a nice shape, or you've just got a rounded edge. I quite like the fluted edge, but there's a technique, and we'll go into that shortly. Now, divide your mixture into two. Don't try to roll out the whole mixture because it's quite tacky. I've got some dusting flour here. All I'm going to do is just lightly dust my hands, put a bit over the dough itself, and just pick a little bit out because it's still quite wet, but that's what we want. And as I said to you before, we don't want to play with it too much. Put some dusting flour onto my balls and again over. I'm just going to round it off. We'll probably get 2 or 3 out of this one once we've rolled it, because we want it to be quite tall. So I've rounded it off. I'm going to put some flour on my rolling pin and just roll it out lightly. And we want it to be about 2 centimetres high. And that's it. I've got my cutter. I'm going to cut here first. And the way you cut is you press down, okay, all the way down, and don't turn. Okay, because if you turn, you run the risk of merging the edges together and you won't get a rise. And we just take the cutter away, lift off our scone, and we place it onto the baking tray. Similarly, I can just do exactly the same, round that off, not playing with it too much. Place a bit of a round, dust the rolling pin, just level it off till it's about 2 centimetres, and I cut again. Okay, number 2. I'm going to leave that mixture to the side. I'm going to grab another piece, not too much again. Then I'm not going to play with it too much. Turn it into a nice round. Bit of dusting flour over the top. Shape it into a round, and then just roll it flat evenly to about 2 centimetres. And then with my cutter, press down, do not turn, and then lift off, and then place that one on the tray as well. And I can bring this leftover from last time, pop it into the hole, join it together again, for play, into a nice round, onto the balls, rolling pin, and just flatten it down. See, if it's sticking, you just get a bit more dusting flour over the top and flatten it down. Press down, don't turn, lift up, and place onto the baking tray. And we just keep doing this until we've used the whole dough. Just roll this last piece up. There's no waste. That's our scones done. Remember, we've got our milk and egg mixture, and all I'm going to simply do with my little pastry brush is just brush the tops of them lightly so they get a nice glaze in the oven. When we place them in the oven's already been preheated to about 200 degrees C, and then we're going to bake them for about between 10 and 20 minutes. You do need to keep an eye on them because they do rise and they can burn and catch quite quickly. Okay, voila, ready for the oven. Okay, great. So The scones were in the oven, 200 degrees C, and that actually took about 20 minutes to actually cook. And they're still nice and warm. And as you can see, they've got a nice golden colour on the top. Now, if you remember, when we cut these with our cutters, the fluted cutter, I told you not to twist. And the reason for it, as you can see, here, if you look at these scones, they've got a lovely crack around the edge. Whereas, I don't know if you noticed, one of them I actually twisted and it's still quite flat, so it hasn't got that rise. So by turning it, it's actually hindered the scone actually rising. So with the crack, rather than use a knife to actually cut the scone, I can actually just pull it apart in the centre. It's nice and warm and it pulls apart lovely to give me two halves. Now, let's do another one. So I just demonstrate that again. Where's the crack? I just pull it apart and it comes apart in half. Really nice. The texture of the dough is really quite soft. It's got a nice creamy yellow going on, so it's fantastic. Now, if you come from Devon or Cornwall, there are several ways you can make a scone. And I'm going to show you two of those ways and a third way as well. So here I have what is called clotted cream. Okay, this is really heavy cream from the cow, obviously. If you don't like the crusted part at the top, you just scrape that away. And I'm going to take a nice spoonful of this cream, mix it around a bit, just soften it up, and then place that on top of my scone. Lots of cream. Just spread it around. There we go. Okay, I also, if you remember, I had the jam that I made earlier this year. I'm going to take a spoonful of this jam, just soften it up a bit and just place that jam on top of the clotted cream. Now, another method is actually to put the jam first on top of the scone. Lots of jam, we like jam. And then we follow that by the cream. Okay, so if you were in Cornwall, you would probably do it this way first. You would do your jam first and then your clotted cream. And if you were from Devon, you would probably do your clotted cream and then your jam. Now, it doesn't matter. It's how you like it or how you prefer to eat it. Now, I quite like the idea of putting my jam on first. If I'm making a cream tea at home, put my jam on first, followed by my clotted cream. Nice dollop of clotted cream on top. And then I've got some strawberries that I've got left over from my crop in the garden. I'm just going to cut the tops off. I'm going to put one in the centre. And then I'm going to cut the top off, cut it in half, and just build the scone with some strawberries around the top. There we go, nice cream scone onto my plate. Here's my jam. And if I was in a nice traditional Cornish tea house, I'd have my clotted cream. I've got some cow's juice here. I use some milk. My milk goes in first. I've got some brewed tea. There you go, I've got a nice Cornish cream tea. Should we take a bite? Quite magnificent, if I say so myself. Thank you. Care2Cook, Cornish cream scones.